Dear, are we getting to lilies of the valley? What do we start with? With the flowers themselves. What do we need for this? First, the clay. I use modern clay with blue label. You can take with a green label, there is not much difference. So, we need to make the white color. So, I'll take a small amount first. It is necessary to crumple it a little so that it becomes more elastic, softer. And I add zinc white. Since without white, the clay will have a grayish tint. We don't need gray clay. We need white one. I squeeze out a small amount. And I knead well. I shoot close enough to show all the details, all the nuances of the process. Since the flowers are small enough, it is necessary to have a closer plan, a larger one. Therefore, my camera is closer than when I was shooting a rose. Hope you can see all the details. Everything will be clear. So, we mixed. And now, what are we going to do next? In general, you can certainly make lilies of the valley in absolutely different ways. You can roll it out completely by hand, for example from a ball. From a ball, then roll with a stack with a ball and cut into cloves additionally. I'll make a little differently. I will show you how to do it additionally in a different way using such a cutter. Here is a small flower. And how am I going to do it? I roll it out to a small thickness, approximately 0.5 millimeters. Now, I make such small fillings. Another one. So, we remove the excess. Now, these teeth, you need to walk on them with your finger. Smooth and thin as it were, only the teeth. If we admit that you could not buy a cut of such a shape, and you have a round one, this is the same thing. We also make an imprint. Also cut it and also go along the edge. Roll out the cloves. Now what am I doing? I remove it carefully. Since this is the shape of a half, I connect these places, 2 parts, and gently press with my fingers. I press. In this case, this is such an excess of clay and I just cut it off with scissors. Now, here's what happens. It turns out a cone-shaped blank. Now, I will use a brush. I use starch in this case. Do not powder, because starch gives such an effect, the ability to roll better. And I dip a stack with a ball, not a big one, but a small one. I will dip it in starch. And knead. I put it in the middle. First I press the seam that I made. I press the ball to my finger. Then I press it down a little. Here's what happens. I put it in my palm. It is preferably to strain the palm a little, so that it is not soft. And now I walk like this with a stack along the edge with teeth, gently pressing lightly. I beat in the middle. Don't overdo it, so that there are no too large depressions, so that they are uniform. That is, we need to create such a very even depression inside. First, it was necessary to do it next to the teeth here, and a little in the center. You can just move the ball from the center to the edge. Here's what happens. Carefully. If it sticks suddenly, we dip a little in starch and we go through again. Carefully. Now, what do I do next? I take a plastic stack with this rounded thickening at the end. I put it on. And I will use it. You can, of course, use the stack, make such dents, tracks. But I'll use a clerical knife. That is more convenient for me. First, thinner veins are obtained. That is where, between the teeth, I carefully trace this place to the center. Do not press hard so as not to break the clay while holding it from behind. The same thing, carefully so as not to crash. Since the flower is quite thin, it is gentle enough. It turns out I used the back of the knife. Not with the blade, but with the back. So, here's what happened. Here's a picture. The hexagon. Now, I take the stack and holding it with my finger so gently, I twist the teeth a little towards myself. I press with a finger and a stack. If it doesn't work the first time, don't worry, because it will start to work out more or less when you make a couple of 3 or 4 of these flowers. The first 2-3 flowers may not work at all. Practice a little and everything will work out. So, to myself, we twist carefully all 16. Here's what happened. The result is such a flower. I hope you can see it well. Now you need to make just such a small hole in the center. Better to do this on a plastic stack. Gently make a hole in the very center. What is this hole for? When the flower dries up, we will thread the wire with the stamens inside which. That is all. We leave it to dry. Let's do it again. Now we will make all 4 flowers. I will show you. We connect it. I'll show you the sequence. We connect it. We press. I cut it off. If you just have a round cutter and make a round shape with, then in principle it turns out the same. Only then it is advisable for you to do so that there is a thickening in the middle. That is, I have a cone, but you need the center of the flower itself to be thicker. Maybe 1 millimeter, maybe 1.5 millimeters. Thicker than this edge, so that later you can roll it out and make a flower, the recess itself. Grease with starch gently. I dip the ball into the starch. You can do it with a large ball, but then the flower will turn out to be larger, so I will use a small ball. I press the joint to which we glued first. Then press on all sides. I put it on my palm and start rolling. They can be in different shapes. Some are more round, some are more barrel-shaped, for example. Nothing wrong with that. Even better. Because they cannot be perfectly even and absolutely identical in nature. Now, we do the same. I make streaks. I hold it gently with my finger so that it does not slip, and I press it from all sides like this. It tries to slip off because the starch is quite slippery. Not slippery, but weak. Glides thanks to starch and tries to move out constantly. So, we made a hole. And now we twist the teeth on ourselves, just pressing again the stack with your fingers, carefully, in order not to overdo it, to avoid unnecessary bending, and of course not to break the clay. Here's another flower. This is how it looks inside, from the side. Well, from above. We leave it. And two more also. Now I will try to make this one faster. I press. Don't worry if excess starch remains. It is very easy to shake it off afterwards. We're just blowing, we're just using a brush. So, and streaks. We make a hole. And we tighten up. So, that's all. One more flower. At 4-5 flower, you will start to do much better, so do not worry if suddenly something doesn't work out for you, especially at the beginning. Somewhere there may be something superfluous, some extra movement, or clay sticks to the hands. If it starts to stick, grease it with starch so that it does not stick. Let's show how to make it if we use big ball. If it is large, then we simply press it from all sides as if wrapping the ball with a flower and just rolling it. You can do that. It turns out a little more voluminous because the girth is obtained more precisely with this ball. So, this is what happens now. We dress and make streaks. So, we make a hole and we tighten up. So, that's all. 4 flowers are ready. Of course, you need to make enough of these flowers, maybe stuff. It depends, of course, what you plan to do. Well, 50 things will have to be done. If we, of course, will make many beautiful twigs with leaves. I'll show you how we will do it. Then we will attach everything, insert it into the basket, and there will be a beautiful meadow with lilies of the valley. So, therefore, it is necessary to make a sufficiently large number of such flowers. I will do it myself for frames, and now I will show you how we will make the buds. So, to make the buds we need white clay again. The main stack. I'll take the clerical knife again. The thinnest wire you have, and wire cutters. First you need to cut small pieces of wire. Not too short, as I will show you later how we will collect the twig. These will be sufficient in size. Well, about 8-9 centimeters. And we cut such segments approximately. What are we going to do now? We need buds starting from the smallest ones, ending with those already half opened. For the start, I'll take a small amount. You can even halve it if you make the smallest buds. Here is such a small pea. Look. So, now I take the glue. I lower the wire a little, a drop, and grab it. Now what should you do? I'll just take a clerical knife and make small cuts with the blade carefully. Since the droplet is very small, you can do as much as you can. Let's say 4 or 5 of these veins. Here's what happens. I got 4. No more. No more feet. Here's what happened. Here's a drop. Here is such a bud. Further. Let's make the bud a little bigger. We take a little more clay for this. We make a circle again. I dip the wire into the glue, and so I grab a little. Now, again we use a clerical knife. This is how I begin to desire streaks. Do not overdo it with a push, so as not to tear or cut too much. Of course, it is better to make 5-6 such cuts. Well, how many fits? It can be shaped a little with your fingers. Make not quite perfectly even shape, but so that the shape is a little chaotic somewhere. On the one hand, it should be more convex, on the other hand, less. In principle, it doesn't matter, so that it is not perfectly smooth, round. Here is a bud. I hope you can see. It fixes. So, much more. Take them out by eye in principle. A little more, a little less. So, and now we hook the wire to the ball, to the drop. Now, I go through like this with a scalpel, a clerical knife again. How to name it correctly? I make cuts. Now what am I doing? You can take a stack for this and correct the shape a little, somewhere more deepening, in order so that they are not perfectly smooth. Because the buds have a shape on the one hand, somewhere more convex, somewhere concave. You can press more here. On the other hand, create such curves a little. Here's a bud. So, let's see if it will focus or not. Wait a second. So, now you can see it. Here is one. And now we'll make a bud that is open a little. For this we take a little more clay. We make a ball. Now again the wire. Be sure to dip it into the glue, otherwise it will not stick. It will not grab. Now, I take the stack and do the same thing that I did. These are the dense streaks stack. So, they turn out more so not thin, more so wide. And now, I will stretch the shape a little so that it is not completely elongated. Now I take a scalpel, a clerical knife, and the tip itself. I'll shake the middle like this gently, as if straightening a little to the side. You can do the same with the main stack. It's just that the knife is sharper, the tip itself. And it turns out this is such a small disclosure. can do that. Here's what happens. You can do it a little differently. I'll show you how. Again, we take enough clay. I immediately make this form in the form of a droplet. I dip in the glue. And now, before passing with a stack in the middle, I'm doing a bit of a hole and roll back. That is, I expand the hole, roll it out with a stack. Just a little bit. Here's what happened. Now, I make grooves like this with the same stack. Here's what happens. It is possible to thin the edges a little so that they are not as straight as if slightly straightened. Again, I spread them either with the tip of a knife or with a stack. Here it turns out such an interesting shape, as if the flower had just begun to open. So, wait a second. Poor focus, unfortunately. I can't capture it visually. As a small detail. Wait a second. Okay. In general, this is what happened. This is the largest bud, because others are open flowers that I showed you. Next, what are we going to do? Now we need to make stamens for the flowers, and after the stamens we will collect the flowers and roll the wire with green clay. So, we'll use clay for the stamens. I'll take the same clay, just add yellow paint to it later. Then you need an extruder. Extruder with a small hole. Now let's see how much it is in millimeters, probably 1.52 millimeters. Yes, about 1.5 millimeters. Tweezers. You can have one with a long tip, you can use ordinary tweezers, which are in every home. And of course glue and wires. Now, I'll take some clay. Since the stamens are small, a small amount will be needed. And it is worth painting a little yellow. Just a little so that it is not too saturated. This amount will be enough. And we knead well. I will add a little more. So, here's what happened. Here is a yellow-blue. Now, I will put this clay into the extruder. Of course, if you don't have an extruder, you don't have to use it. Why am I doing this? Because it's more convenient for me to take a small amount of yellow-colored clay, and so that it does not dry out quickly. For this you can use extruders. You can use a regular syringe. Just use it like an extruder. Also put clay into a syringe and gently squeeze out a small amount. So, let's get started. I take the glue. I take one segment. And I squeeze out a small amount of clay. Here's a droplet. Here's a small worm. In general, if you look at how much it will be in millimeters, then 2-3 millimeters. To 2.5 millimeters probably. Now I dip the wire into the glue, and what needs to be done? I wrap it with yellow clay to the wire now. You can even take a little more clay. Now I make this shape to the edge of the tapered shape. I press. You can do this with a scalpel, such incisions. It is simple. I try to create such a shape with such flattening movements. Well, basically there are 4 faces. It is desirable to make over 5 or 6, but I have a very small distance. Here's what happens. Let's show you one more, just with another tweezers. I'll squeeze out a little more. I dip it in the glue. In general, stamens can be made in very different ways, because they're very small in nature. A real lily of the valley has very small stamens, so we try to make it approximately. Just how it goes. Press with ordinary tweezers. I try to do it closer to one another so that you can press at least 5 times. Here's what happens. These tweezers are better. This little star turns out. Seen, not seen. Here it is, such a stamen. So, well, now I will immediately glue them to the flowers, to our blanks. Now we insert a wire into this hole that we made. And I will smear the base of the stamen with a little glue. So that it sticks to the flower, and I glue it with this movement. Here's what happens. It turns out that there is such a nice needle inside the flower. There are 5 stamens. You can separately glue each stamen, but it is a very long, laborious process. Therefore, we have simplified the task. So, and it is quite convenient to do this with tweezers. I liked this option. I used to do cuts either with a stack or with a scalpel with a knife, but it turned out not very nice. I didn't like it. Now this option suits me better. So we will make 2 more stamens and glue them. Yet again. I take a small amount. Wire, and I wrap it like this. Of course, in a live stamen, a live lily of the valley, this is the place, the very edge of the stamen, the tip, it sticks out a little. We are holding a pair of tweezers, creating an interesting effect. All the same, the edge, the tip, it stands out. Enough. And this is such a pointed shape. So, we made this asterisk again. At least from the top, it looks like an asterisk. We insert into the base, in a flower. we coat with glue and glue it. So, another one is ready, and one more wire remains, so let's make another one. If, again, I repeat, you do not have an extruder, not a syringe, just wrap it in a film, put clay, and take in small pieces. It's just that it can dry out faster. So, here is the form I'm doing. And again, I take the tweezers and press gently from bottom to top. I divide 5 such thin stamens. Here's what happens. So, and one more flower.